What if everything you thought you knew about Little Red Riding Hood was wrong? Beyond the basket and the big bad wolf lies a tale far more complex, a story brimming with hidden psychological depths. Prepare to see this childhood classic in a way you never imagined, revealing its true, unsettling meaning. And at the end, the real story of Red will be told. Little Red Riding Hood has long carried a darker undercurrent beneath its familiar veneer, a tale whose innocence is merely the surface of something far more unsettling. The vivid red cloak, often seen as a charming detail, becomes a warning flare, a symbol of vulnerability, desire, and the dangerous attention that naivety can draw. As Red wanders into the forest, her step off the designated path is not just an act of curiosity, but the first moment she unknowingly enters a realm where safety dissolves and the shadows reveal their true appetites. The forest itself transforms into a living metaphor for danger. Its twisting paths and deep silence represent the moments in life when one's innocence becomes most precarious, when temptations and threats hide behind the warmth of a smile or the promise of something intriguing. Red's small basket of gifts, usually associated with kindness and duty, now feels like a fragile offering carried through a world eager to take advantage of the unguarded. The wolf emerges from the darkness not simply as a predator, but as the embodiment of exploitation, the charming stranger whose friendly demeanor masks a predatory hunger. His cunning questions and deceptive warmth reveal how easily trust can be manipulated, how the most dangerous forces often disguise themselves as companions. His eventual devouring of Red and her grandmother becomes a chilling symbol of innocence consumed, identity swallowed whole by the relentless pull of manipulation and deceit. In this darker telling, the wolf is not merely an enemy. He is the shadow of humanity's most destructive impulses, lurking both outside us and within. Red's grandmother, once a gentle figure of comfort and wisdom, becomes a reminder of how even the strong can be overtaken by the unexpected cruelty of the world. Her defeat speaks to the fragility of tradition and the helplessness that can descend when the familiar is confronted with something cunning enough to exploit every weakness. Her silence inside the wolf's belly becomes a haunting image of wisdom, lost, drowned by the force of predation. The hunter's arrival, often celebrated as salvation, carries its own grim tone. His presence underscores how dire the situation has become, how violent the intervention must be to restore even the faintest balance. His cutting open of the wolf feels less like a rescue and more like a grim autopsy of innocence, a dissection of the darkness that had already done its damage. Even when Red is freed, she emerges not as a triumphant heroine, but as someone irrevocably changed, touched by the knowledge of how perilous the world can be. In the shadows of modern life, the darker implications of the tale feel painfully familiar. Online predators, manipulative relationships, deceit masked as kindness, all echo the wolf's tactics, reminding us that danger rarely announces itself with fangs bared. The forest becomes the digital world, the social world, any place where the naive wander without fully grasping the risks that surround them. The story warns that innocence alone cannot protect us, and that awareness, boundaries, and skepticism become necessary shields against forces that seek to take advantage of trust. Yet even in its darkness, Little Red Riding Hood teaches something vital. It reveals that the world contains wolves in many shapes, that vulnerability can become a trap, and that survival often demands a painful awakening. The tale endures because it captures a universal truth. that the journey from innocence to understanding is often shadowed by danger, and that every step into the deeper forest holds the possibility of both peril and revelation. Through its unsettling imagery and its stark portrayal of trust betrayed, it reminds us that facing the darkness and recognizing it for what it truly is a necessary part of becoming whole. And now, the real dark story of Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a kind and gentle little girl who was loved by everyone who met her, especially her grandmother. To show her affection, the grandmother once made her a beautiful red velvet cap, which the girl loved so much that she wore it all the time. From then on, everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother asked her to visit her sick grandmother who lived deep in the forest, a half-hour's walk from the village. She gave Little Red Riding Hood a piece of cake and a bottle of wine and reminded her to behave politely, stay on the path, and not to wander off. The little girl promised to obey and set off cheerfully. As she walked through the forest, a wolf appeared and began talking to her. She didn't know that he was dangerous and answered all his questions innocently, telling him where her grandmother lived and what she carried in her basket. The clever wolf thought to himself how tasty both the girl and her grandmother would be, and he began forming a plan. Pretending to be friendly, he suggested that she stop and enjoy the beauty of the forest, the singing birds, and the lovely flowers. Distracted by curiosity, Little Red Riding Hood strayed from the path to pick flowers for her grandmother. Each time she found one, she saw another more beautiful one farther away, and she wandered deeper and deeper into the woods. Meanwhile, the wolf hurried straight to the grandmother's house. When he arrived, he pretended to be Little Red Riding Hood, entered easily, and immediately devoured the old woman whole. Then he dressed himself in her clothes, put on her cap, and climbed into bed to wait for the girl. A while later, Little Red Riding Hood finally reached the cottage. She noticed that the door was open and the room felt strange and quiet. Nervously, she approached the bed and saw her grandmother looking very odd. Their conversation became the famous exchange, "Oh, grandmother, what big ears you have! All the better to hear you with. Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have! All the better to see you with. Oh, grandmother, what big hands you have! All the better to grab you with. Oh, grandmother, what a terribly big mouth you have! All the better to eat you with." At that moment, the wolf leapt out of bed and swallowed her whole. Soon afterward, a huntsman happened to pass by and heard the wolf snoring loudly. Curious, he entered the house and saw the wolf lying in the bed. Realizing the creature had probably eaten the old woman, he decided not to shoot, but to cut the wolf open. With a few careful snips, Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother emerged alive. The girl quickly gathered heavy stones and filled the wolf's belly. When the wolf woke up and tried to run, the stones were so heavy that he collapsed and died. Everyone rejoiced. The huntsman took the wolf's pelt. The grandmother ate the cake and drank the wine, regaining her strength, and Little Red Riding Hood reflected on what had happened. She promised herself, "As long as I live, I will never leave the path again if Mother tells me not to." Later, the story tells of another time when Little Red Riding Hood went to visit her grandmother again. This time, she was wiser. Another wolf tried to tempt her to leave the path, but she resisted his tricks and went straight to her grandmother's house. When she arrived, she told her grandmother about the wolf. Together, they locked the door and prepared in case he came. The wolf indeed appeared, pretending once again to be Little Red Riding Hood, but when no one answered, He climbed onto the roof to wait for her to leave. The grandmother cleverly instructed her granddaughter to fill a large stone trough with the water used to boil sausages. The smell rose up to the wolf, who leaned too far over the edge, lost his balance, and fell into the trough and drowned. From then on, Little Red Riding Hood never strayed from the path again. She had learned her lesson, to be cautious, to listen to those who care for her, and to recognize danger, even when it hides behind a friendly face. And so, she and her grandmother lived happily and safely ever after, their bond stronger and their wisdom deeper than before.